So I'll start. Yeah. Is that it's yourself, Milind? Anyone else online? Yeah, we'll give people a couple of minutes and then we can give it a go. Can you see my screen, Milind?
Yes, I can see your screen, which shows a graph.
Yeah, that's all it is. Yeah, it's the one single slide.
Okay. Yeah, I'll be quiet now.
So that. Okay, so it looks like just you and me, Milind. I'll start, and people can join in as they come in. Okay, my name is Naveen Bharadwaj. I am a chemical engineering graduate from IIT Kharagpur, class of 95. I've spent all my career in the oil and gas industry with the likes of Enron, British Gas, and Shell, initially as a process engineer and later as a drilling engineer. My weight loss aspirations took on some seriousness about a couple of years back after I turned 50. And my weight, already on the higher side, started creeping up towards the mid 80s in kilos. My ideal weight is around 68 kilos if you go by the desirable BMI of 25. But this renewed attention towards my weight was also prompted by a few visits to my GP within a very short span of time, all for very different reasons. It started with a shingles attack, which unfortunately was controlled, which fortunately was controlled at an early stage due to intervention from my GP. Routine blood tests also indicated my cholesterol levels were on their way up and were hovering around mid sevens in millimoles per liter. During the next year or so, I discovered my BP had started creeping up as well towards the 150 to 160 kind of range. And I was diagnosed with a sleep apnea issue as well, because of which I had to go on CPAP therapy. Now, barring shingles, which has an indirect but quite a tangible relationship with body weight, the other issues I have just described had a clear link with my increasing body weight. Over the next 2 years, I was getting consistent advice from my GP to work towards lowering this weight. However, usually, as many of you might already know quite well, this is a very general recommendation, and there really isn't any concrete advice on how to go about achieving it. So to me, it had been clear for a while that my weight has a much stronger link with my diet rather than my physical activity levels. I used to do half marathons earlier in my career. Even now, I maintain a consistent 10,000 steps per day and at least 3 days per week of 30 minutes weight training sessions in the gym. But my weight issues have refused to abate even after that. It wasn't the regular meals that were the issue here. It was mainly the intermittent snacking, mainly on carbs and sugar-rich snacks, that I seemed to have no control over, no matter how hard I tried. And the snacking just seemed to grow worse with work-related stress. So I kept looking around for the right diet plan that would address this issue. But it was clear in my mind that I just couldn't adopt any diet plan. It had to meet some key requirements that I had in mind. I'd heard too many stories about diets that seemed to work for a while until they just didn't work. So it had to be sustainable, which meant an Indian diet we could sustain as a family. It had to be a vegetarian diet, and it couldn't just be limited to a bunch of recipes that I eventually grew out of. The scientific reasoning behind the dietary recommendations had to be clear, so I could replicate it at will later whenever I needed to. It just couldn't be a bunch of instructions. Also, do this, do that, eat more of this, eat less of this. The plan also could not interfere with my work schedule and the clarity of thought that I needed at work, because I kept feeling hungry or having those hunger pangs all the time. So once I was finished with the diet, it also should not result in any major micronutrient deficiencies or any muscle loss. My main objective was to lose fat only, as loss of muscle eventually ends up making you more vulnerable to weight gain. So that, in short, was my laundry list for what I needed from this diet. But after having looked around for almost a year and a half, I had failed to find something that really fit that list. I'd heard of various kinds of diets, vegan, paleo, keto, etc. But there was just too many conflicting views to trust any of them. So sometime last year, when I was on a holiday in India, I met my wife's cousin there. She lives in Singapore and had adopted this keto diet for weight loss and had managed to shed and keep away a significant number of kilos over the past few months. The folks she consulted were this new startup called Indian Weight Loss Diet, IWLD, and are based in India. Her own sister, who had a hypothyroidism issue, and she's based in London, had been experimenting with it for a while and had achieved similar levels of success with it as well. So the folks at IWLD were relatively low cost. 2-month plan costs roughly around 6,500 rupees. That included the initial instructional videos with a daily communication and follow-up on WhatsApp. I like the fact that their instructional webinars have the appropriate level of scientific details that I needed about the effects of keto diet and intermittent fasting. Initially, the effects on the appetite, and then on the subsequent weight loss trends. They had quite a few homemade vegetarian and non-vegetarian recipes that they demonstrated on YouTube to their members through their account. Now, if you're a member, you had to send them photos of your daily food, your weight, and a small log of your daily routine. It took about 2 minutes in all to send all this detail in. And it certainly appeared to me to be the right level of detail and engagement with them that I was comfortable with. Milind, you're still there? You're following me?
Yeah, yeah, Naveen, I'm following it. And I'm interrupting you. I'm in a similar boat, except that I'm much older to you. But I have all those things, symptoms, and all those, including the sleep apnea, and I'm on CPAP. Okay, please continue.
That's
So,
good. Okay, good to know that.
very
Yeah.
interesting.
Yeah. So I read their ketogenic diet plan, got the ingredients they asked for, brought myself a digital weighing machine and started following their instructional video to the T. And we were then well on our way fairly quickly. Didn't take a lot of preparation, just to be clear. The IWLD team is led by a husband-wife duo, and they're supported by a bunch of trainers that they have themselves hired and trained. Their instructional video talks about the long-term effects of a carbs-dominant diet, particularly on your hunger and satiety hormones, and how this diet plan attacks those hormonal issues right from the beginning. Once the appetite is in control, then the fat or protein dominant diet plan that they recommend, it helps something called ketosis, which is basically the fat burning, the burning of your body fat to yield the ketones as an energy source. That process kicks in. Now, there is much focus on the quantity of proteins, on the quality of proteins that makes up your protein intake. So it's mainly animal proteins that they recommend. You might think this is meat, but there's a lot of paneer, cheese, and milk and yogurt, high protein yogurt, and sometimes even egg. If you're not averse to eggs, all of that is allowed. That forms the bulk of your protein diet, and a lot of ghee and coconut is part of it as well. And high fat fruits like avocados, for example, form a part of that diet. Yeah. So usually it's about a 60% fat and a 40% proteins split between the diet, between the protein and the fat. And it's quite interesting because it seems quite counterintuitive that you could lose a lot of weight with just eating fats and proteins and not much of carbs. So class 2 proteins, what was out of the diet essentially was class 2 proteins. For example, lentils, dals, peas, soya. You couldn't have any fruits, no grains, and all kinds of sugar were completely out. Sugar-based diets. There's quite a bit of salt and lemon intake that's there. Almost 1 full teaspoon of salt, the red salt, the black salt, and the red, black, and the white salt mix. Almost 1 teaspoon daily as salt, lemon water. Plenty of plain water, at least 4 liters a day, and micronutrient supplements, which the food itself may not be able to supply you, but which supports your micronutrient requirements. All of that was part of this diet. You can't, if you look at the chart, then you can't not help notice there's a steep drop about 2 to 3 kilos in the initial 2 to 3 days. Now that's mainly the stored water loss that you're seeing. That water is bound with glycogen, and glycogen is essentially the reserve. Once you deplete the glucose levels in the blood, it's the glycogen that the body falls back on to meet the reserve requirement. So when you're running, for example, the glucose gets exhausted very quickly. It's the glycogen that's fueling your run most of the time. But the glycogen also binds a lot of water with it. And once the glycogen starts depleting, that's what you lose as body weight. About 300 grams of glycogen is what you normally have. And that can bind anywhere from 2 to 3 to 4 kilos of water. So the fat starts breaking down after the glycogen. So you always have that cushion of glycogen that you have to get rid of before the body starts attacking the fat. And that releases ketones, which essentially is then the fuel that the body needs for all its main functions. Uh, the proteins are supplying all the amines needed for your muscle building activity and your regular bodily functions. But the fuel mainly comes from the fats. So the weight loss after this initial steep loss is a fairly steady 300 to 400 grams per day, as you can see from the chart. Um, but if you notice closely, I had two instances of this weight loss starting to plateau out, roughly almost 10 days apart. So after the first 10 days, I started seeing this plateau. And the IWLD guys, unfortunately, were not of much help. Uh, so it started dropping. It started sort of stabilizing and started, in fact, increasing a little bit. So I had to fall back on AI. Google Bard was a great help in this, just to understand what was happening in the body and how I could avoid, how I could get past this plateau. And there were two options. So one was I could extend my eating window, my fasting window, and the other was I could introduce an increased level of physical activity. So I couldn't actually start running or anything because I would get fatigued out very quickly if I started running. That was because I had no glycogen left in my body. So it had to be resistance training or brisk walking. So I introduced, I'd already switched across to around almost 24 hours from a 16-hour fasting window. I'd already, now I was on a 24-hour fasting window, which I increased to 36-hour fasting window. So I was eating once in a day and a half. And that helped me get past this first plateau. Around this time, I also consulted my GP, and he was quite happy with the 6 kilos of weight loss that I'd already achieved. But he didn't really have any clear instruction on how I could negotiate past this plateau. So as I said, it was Google Bard that came to my assistance here. So then at the second window, the second plateau which I got was again another 10 days from here. And this time, the only option I had was to increase the level of physical activity. I put in about 4 to 4.5 kilometers of brisk walking every day, and about 3 to 4 sets of resistance training from this point onwards. And that again helped me negotiate this plateau and get past it. Yeah. So that's.
Naveen, I just want to know, this is Arvind here.
Yes, Arvind.
Yeah, I was just want to know that in the 48 hours of fasting, what are you not permitted to eat absolutely anything, or is there anything that you consume in that period?
Yes. So I'll have a Q&A at the end. Maybe we can bring this up there. Yeah. Is that okay?
Okay.
Yeah. Okay. So there was no way I could do intensive aerobic exercises. So it was mainly a lot of walking and resistance training that I was able to do here. So eventually by day 38, I had achieved around 12 kilos of weight loss. Now, my plan was usually this program that these guys have is for about 4 months. 3 months of weight loss training and 1 month of weight maintenance. And unfortunately, I just didn't have that kind of patience. So I wanted to compress this within 2 months. So I targeted around 10 to 12 kilos of weight loss. So that even if after that, I started getting some of the glycogen back and I regained some of the 3 to 4 kilos that I lost initially, I would still have a substantial amount of weight loss. And then I would switch across to a weight maintenance diet, which is much closer to a regular diet and does not have those same issues. It's not, you don't lose as quickly, but you have a consistent weight loss. If you see right towards the end after day 38, that's when I switched on to my weight maintenance diet. So I negotiated with the guys at IWLD and I said, I want to start my weight maintenance diet. And after day 38, they were happy for me to switch to that diet. I gained a couple of kilos in the first couple of days with the glycogen coming back into my system. But then I started achieving a steady weight decline, even though it was fluctuating quite a bit. But that is because I was experimenting with a few things. Should I have the meal of the day? When should I have, or should I have two meals? Should I just stick to one meal? Should I have that in the morning? Should I have it in the evening? Because if you have it in the evening, your body does not get enough time to lose that glycogen. In the morning, if you have it, then the body consumes that glycogen throughout your daily activity. So all of those experiments have been going on, and I've sort of gotten to a steady pattern now, which I'm quite happy with. I'm targeting another 6 kilos of weight loss over the next 2 or 3 months, and I think I can achieve that with this. So then I had my GP had advised that I should do some blood tests at the end of this 38-day program. So I didn't really have any major deficiencies. So I had that blood test. I went back. He was quite happy with the results. The cholesterol had come down from the high 7.5, 7.6 to about 5 millimoles per liter, which is within the normal range. My sugar levels were normal. The BP, I was on BP and cholesterol tablets. So and my BP had been quite regular all through this, even after I'd taken myself off those tablets. It had stayed quite regular within the 120 to 130 range and 80 to 85 diastolic. My doctor said, well, I could stay off those medications for the next 2 months and then come back for another test. There was still an issue with my thyroid, which was on the lower end of the band, and that's been the case since June of last year when I had my previous blood test. So he's asked me to repeat that. It's subclinical hypothyroidism, he suspects, and I might need to go on some minor amount of medication. But he's given me another 2 months on this diet, so I can then see what the effect is. So overall, he's quite happy with the outcome. I'm quite happy. I feel much healthier, much more active, and have experienced quite a significant gain of self-respect. When you start gaining a lot of weight, the first thing you lose probably is your self-respect, that you're trying everything and it's just not going away. Maybe it's just an age thing and this and that. But fortunately, this diet worked for me. So that's pretty much been my weight loss journey over the last 55 odd days. And I'm happy to take any further questions. So I believe it was Arvind, right?
Yeah, Naveen,
Yes.
the same question I have. So if it is 24 hours fasting, then what do you have in between those 24 hours?
So normally it's just a water fast. So that's why, and it's difficult to have those water fasts, just plain water. Normally 4 liters of water every day. And if you're feeding hunger pangs, then what they recommend is you take at least one big full glass of salt water, half a teaspoon of salt water mixed with the rock salt, with black salt, and with the white salt in equal proportions, and with half a lemon at least. And that has a pretty good effect on your hunger pangs. It takes that away fairly quickly. Very effective. And I had initially had that just for once a day in the morning, but then I made it twice a day, once in the morning and once in the evening. And of course, it's difficult to do that if you from day one. You can't have those 24 or 48 hours. In fact, I even had a three-day water fast after I think it was day 30. Now, you can't have that in the beginning itself because the hormones, your hunger hormones are not in favor. There are two hormones basically that they focus on. One is called ghrelin, which is secreted in your stomach. It's responsible for making your stomach give out those gastric juices and making you feel hungry. And the other is called leptin. It is a satiety hormone, which makes you feel full. And normally things like coconut oil, like a lot of fats, they have the release of the satiety hormone, and you feel full most of the time after having a meal. For at least the next 5 or 6 hours, you feel very much full, which is very unlike when you have carbs. So that takes time to kick in. The hormones becoming favorable, so you don't feel hungry all the time, and you feel full. And only then can you start attempting those 24-hour to 36-hour to 48-hour fasting periods. It doesn't really work very well if you start it right from the beginning. Does that answer your question, Harry?
It does. And at what stage you stopped medication for hypertension and cholesterol?
So that was, I think, on the 10th day, around about the second week of my diet plan, because I was consistently monitoring my BP levels. And the BP was quite okay. I mean, it was not fluctuating much. I'd already started the CPAP treatment. Now, the CPAP is important here because if you're a sleep apnea patient, then what tends to happen is you tend to have those elevated blood pressures in the morning, early in the morning, because you've had several instances of sleep apnea related stopping of breath in the night. Your breath gets interrupted, and that has an impact on your blood pressure levels. And typically, you would have higher blood pressures in the morning. And of course, the CPAP helped with that. And when I kept monitoring my BP on the Amron machine, I was seeing it was quite regular. So by the second week, I decided I was going to go off that medication. It wasn't very high anyways. It was quite moderate, 140 to 150 in that sort of range. So yeah, and my doctor, when I spoke to him later, he agreed with it. He said it's fine. Because the other thing that happened is that I started actually getting low blood pressure. And because of that, when I spoke to the IWLD guys, they recommended I increase the salt water intake, because the salt water helps with the low blood pressure. So that's one of the interventions that was very useful from them. They said increase your salt water intake, and that blood pressure, low BP instance lasted probably for a day and a half. But then it got back to normal. So then I decided, well, there's no point really continuing with the high BP medication as well. And I got myself off that. Does that answer you, Kevin?
Yeah, it does. It does. In fact, look, I've crossed 65 already, and uh, my target would be probably not so achieving weight loss, not in a, maybe over 3 months. So with your experience, I would like to contact this IWL people, right? The IWL, right?
It's Indian Weight Loss Diet, IWLD.
LD. Okay.
Yeah. So I can
And
send those
yeah,
post those details on WhatsApp.
sure.
Now just with IWLD, my concern with them is the people at the top, they are quite knowledgeable. If you look at their
Mm.
webinars,
Mm.
they're quite good quality webinars. The discussion on the endocrinal activity, the hormones, your biochemistry, all of that is quite good. But the people they've hired for training, I don't know how qualified they are. I've been asking them for their training certificates, whether they've gone through any industry recognized training, and I've not seen anything from them yet. Now these guys are trained in house, and most of their response is very mechanical. Some the things like increase your salt water intake, or reduce the class 2 proteins in your diet. All that is fairly mechanical. When I had this weight plateauing issues, they sort of tried to say, well, you might have eaten something which is not right. Well, I had a lot of salads. I was eating olives, for example, and this lady started pointing to olives, and I said, well, can you demonstrate why olives would be bad in such a diet? Because it's got a lot of fat content, a good quality fat content, which you normally recommend. And they sort of fumbled around. So I had to go and do a lot of my own research as well. They're good for baseline level guidance. They're good. Their webinars are quite excellent quality. But the daily follow-up that these guys have, I'm not heavily impressed with that. And that's why I had to go and do my own research. And I found Bard, the AI tool that Google have, was excellent to have some of these communications, these conversations. And I could really understand what was happening. The whole glycogen discussion, how to get past these weight plateaus, the difference between the class 2 proteins, the class 1 proteins, and all of that. And what exactly is it that the long chain triglycerides that are available in coconut oil that helps kick off ketosis. These guys, they talk about autophagy, your body eating itself, but it's not really autophagy that you're targeting. What you're targeting, what you want to kick in, is something called ketosis, which is the body burning its own fat. And what are the signs that you recognize that ketosis is happening or has stopped or has stalled? All of that was very useful information on Bard. So I'll just caution you with that. I would recommend you go with IWLD. There's no doubt about that. They've got some excellent information, an excellent diet plan. But the only drawback is with their daily support.
Probably they have the ready answers given to them for standard questions, and they were following that.
Yes, and in India, I believe there is no real requirement for you to be a qualified dietitian, to be a trainer, so there is it's not so well regulated as it is here in Australia. I found many Australian dietitians were quite well regulated, who were quite well qualified, but the problem was the kind of diet that they were offering. That didn't really work with with the family environment we had and what we needed here for it to be sustainable.
I get it. Okay, fantastic. And in fact, I will be, sending you queries on and off. Today is the best day to start it. Okay.
I'll be most happy to assist. No problem at all. Whatever I can do, I will try and do.
Now, in your recorded lecture, I would like to hear again. I mean, please share that. And also, I will take down some notes for myself. Okay.
I've got a transcript of this. I'll send that on WhatsApp. I'll post the video also probably on YouTube, and then maybe we can see if there's any other way of sharing it.
Yeah. Yeah. I'm sure with this, couple of our friends in Australia would benefit.
Oh yeah, I'm quite hopeful of that as well.
Surely.
All right, that's all I have, unless there are any more questions.
What about Arvind? Arvind had some questions. Arvind?
Arvind, any further questions?
Maybe he's still online, but
yeah, I can see him. No worries.
Yeah. Okay. So I look forward to receiving your transcript, and and wish me best of luck. Same.
Absolutely. Best of luck. Thanks.
Okay. Good day to you. Yeah. Yeah.
Take care.
Yeah. I'll be communicating with you. Okay.
Sure.
Thank you.
Take care. Bye-bye. क्या रिकॉर्डिंग कहाँ है